Welcome everyone to Edge Talk Radio. My name is Angela Zabel, that's me, and I am here today with Beth and Rick Olsen, and who are the authors of a book that is very near and dear to my heart called We Never Left You. There are shamans, speakers, teachers from Wisconsin, and we're going to talk about their journey of loss, forgiveness, and love. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Angela Zabel. I am connected to spirit and been working with a team on the other side in the non-physical my entire life. And I've been sharing messages from them with a multitude of people and also people on the other side in a multitude of realms. I am a teacher, coach, and a medium. And I also offer guidance and mediumship online along with classes. And you can also find me on Edge Talk Radio, which is here. I have Amazing Soul. And also I write for Edge Magazine. You can find out more about me at angelazabel.com. You can check out all my social media from there. And also to talk a little bit about Edge Magazine, they are the leading in events and media resources dedicated to the aspects of holistic living, health, and wellness, and the mysteries beyond, sharing information, wisdom, and resources committed to promoting businesses, organizations, and individuals who support our collective journey to wholeness and balance. And you can check out more about them at Edge Magazine and is at edgemagazine.net. So tonight we are working with Beth and Rick Olsen. I've got a full disclosure here. I have worked with them before and they have been part of my retreat before, and amazing people, great with energy, shamanism, and their hearts speak for themselves. So Beth and Rick, in 1999, Beth and Rick experienced a tragedy that no parent should ever have to go through: the loss of their two children, Jessica and Joshua, in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The immediate aftermath was such a monumental loss, proved to be numbing haze filled with police, family, friends, and the media. But it wasn't long before Beth and Rick began receiving messages from their deceased children, assuring them they weren't actually gone and ultimately proving the existence of life after death. Now, 23 years later, Rick and Beth share what they have learned through their painful journey in order to help those who have experienced similar tragedy. And once again, living in a house filled with laughter, the Olsens proved that healing is not only possible, and you're able to survive such a devastating blow, but to eventually thrive. And their journey has led them through with energy healing and shamanism, and it has helped so many people along the path. And they are continuing to evolve these gifts and reach more people. And some of their classes include shamanisms and healings. They have the medicine wheel class, Journey to the Upper World, Journey for Your Power Animal, shamanic group healings, individual group healings. They speak at grief groups. And of course, the author of We Never Left You, that you can find on Amazon and wherever books are sold. And I have actually used their book to give to parents that I have met that really needed an extra insight into what they were going through. And bar none, beautiful book. You can find out more about them on their website, weneverleftyou.com, and also on Facebook. It's WNLY99. So definitely check them out. And amazing people, and I am so excited to have them on. So Rick and Beth, I've given just a little snippet of your background. First, I want to welcome you on here and thank you for being here and sharing your story. And I can't wait for you to let the people know a little bit more about your background and what brought us to this show about loss, forgiveness, and love.
Okay. Well, first of all, Angel, thank you for having us here. We're
Yes, thank
always
you.
honored to be able to share our story and to be talked about so in such beautiful words and love. So thank you.
You're
So
So,
go
so
ahead.
this journey, go ahead. What brought you here, Rick?
Well, we were gonna talk a little bit about what got us to this point. We'll go talk a little bit about the accident and some of the things that occurred, the signs that we got, the directions, and then talk about the latest aspect of that, where the kids from the other side continue to push us in a direction and give us insight. So we thought that's what we would do tonight.
Awesome. So go ahead. I can't wait to hear your side of the story. And I know there's another chapter to this story that I think is going to be so interesting and intriguing for all the people out there.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, excuse me, as you mentioned, we were involved in a car accident in 1999. We had, Beth and I were in our minivan along with our 9-year-old daughter Jessica and 7-year-old son Joshua. It was a Sunday afternoon. We were on our way to the mall to look at some things to build a fence for the kids because we had bought them a puppy. We had just moved about a month earlier. And the drunk driver was fleeing from his parents' house. He was an older gentleman, and he ran through a red light at over 80 miles an hour and broadsided our minivan. In the process of that first impact, Josh was killed right away. I was unconscious. Beth was still awake. And so we we'll talk just briefly about the scene and then not too much, and then we'll talk more about some of the signs that we got after that. So
Right. So, yes, as we got to the intersection, we had heard a squad car coming, and Rick, of course, waited. He didn't pull through the intersection, but as we watched the squad car go to the left, Rick even proceeded to like check the intersection again. And as he decided to go through, the next thing I heard was this huge noise, and I turned around to the children and I'm like, what was that noise? And that is when I saw that Joshua was dead and Jessica was half thrown out the window. I saw that Rick was alive. He was making noise, moaning. And I looked down at myself and I was perfectly fine. I was shocked. So that got me instantly in the I've got to save my family mode, and jumped out of the car and asked God for help. And I was like, I need a doctor. I need a doctor. And right away, this gentleman came up and he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, I'm a doctor and so is my wife. And we happened to see the accident. We were in the intersection. And what can we do to help? And so I said, just get my daughter out and save her. And so they proceeded to do that.
mhm. And so we ended up at the hospital. They were able to get me out of the car. They determined I wasn't that severely injured, but I was the last one to leave the accident site. Um, Beth and Jessica had already went to the hospital. Um, they put me in one of the curtained areas of the emergency room because they determined I wasn't that severely injured. And as I'm laying in there, all of a sudden I hear from the curtain next to me, why am I here? Somebody yelling, let me go. I don't belong here. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, unbeknownst to everybody else, they had put the drunk driver in the curtain next to me. And then as I'm laying there, a doctor comes in and says, I'm sorry for your loss. And I said, I know. I said, Josh didn't make it. And he swore and walked out of the room. And then Beth came in shortly after that.
Yeah, we believe that doctor was the doctor that was working on Jessica. So as he, proceeded to come to me and say, you really need to say your goodbyes. And I said, well, I actually need to go ask my husband if this is okay, or this isn't something that I can't do by myself to make this decision. So we think that was the doctor that was working on Jessica. So he had no clue we had already lost a son in the intersection. So I went in to get Rick and I said, we have to let Jessica go.
Mhm.
It never gets any easier, even after 23 years, to say that.
Yeah, and so we said our goodbyes, and we ended up, they ended up releasing me from the hospital that night, and we went home and fell asleep eventually, and we woke up the next morning, and Beth said, I can't go on. She said, I can't go on without them. I said, well, can you make it through the day? And she said, no. I said, well, can you make it through the next hour? And she said, no. I said, how about 5 minutes? And she said, no. And I said, well, let's just lay here then and make it to the next breath. So we just laid there for a while and just breathed. And all of a sudden, Beth says, I got to go to the bathroom. And so life just has a way of pushing you along no matter what takes place. And so we got up and began to deal with everything. The accident happened on a Sunday, and we had decided, because we had just moved a month earlier, that we would have the funeral back in the town where the kids grew up. And so on Wednesday, we went to the funeral parlor to meet with the funeral director. And so we walk into this place, and the atmosphere, the lights were dimmed, there wasn't anybody there, and we're just like, hello, hello. And there's nobody around. And eventually somebody came, and I'm thinking, well, this kind of fits our mood. It's just dark and empty. And we said, well, we're the Olsens, and Jim is working on our children. And she says, okay, let me go get him. And so we're standing there waiting, and he comes walking up, and he's got this big smile on his face. And I'm thinking, you're an idiot. And he says to us, that Josh, he keeps turning my lights on and off and changing the radio stations. Can you tell him to knock it off? I can't get any work done. And I'm like, what? And he says, Josh, he's turning the lights on and off and changing my radio stations. I can't get any work done. Would you tell him to knock it off? And we just kind of stood there and looked at him for a little bit.
I thought he was crazy.
Right.
1999, nobody talked about my children being alive. Many people said they're just gone, so.
That was a whole different time in really in the universe. It feels like a
Right.
whole lifetime ago with 1999. That stuff wasn't talked about.
Not at all.
No, not at all. And so Jim was our introduction to the fact that our kids weren't just gone. They were just in a different place. And we had to begin to understand that place and learn how to connect with them.
Right.
And so the next day,
I had a friend in West Bend, and she's a medium. So I had reached out to her. The funeral was on Thursday afternoon. So I said, can you please see us on Thursday morning? And she said, of course. So we went there early, sat and talked for a good hour. I mean, it was really beautiful, but as we got up to leave, she's like, oh, don't leave yet. The kids are here. And so we sat back down because now we know their spirit, right? And Kathy is her name, and she kept looking up to the upper left of the room, and then she would tell us things. And so she said the first thing was like, oh, it's Josh is not here, just Jessica. Josh, he's at Six Flags Great America theme park because there are no lines in the spirit world. And we laughed because we're like, that would be the first place Josh would go, So, and then she looked up in the corner again, and she's like, did Jessica love fried chicken? I'm like, oh my God. No, I've never made fried chicken in my life. I still haven't, because I think all that oil and grease kind of scares me. So, and also the mess. I think about that. So we were joking. We were like, oh my gosh, what? And she goes, well, she's saying to me, she wants the chicken in the basket. So we both looked at each other and we're like, I have no clue. And we talked about the chicken and the biscuit crackers. I'm like, I've never bought the chicken and the biscuit crackers. And she goes, she really wants the chicken in the basket. So now we have to go back in time. So on that weekend, it was July 18th that they passed. Well, that weekend I was at an American Girl sale in Madison with my friends. So American Girl dolls are heritage dolls. They have book series. They have might be from the 1950s. They might be from the 1800s. Well, Jessica loved American Girl dolls. She had 2 of them. And so that weekend, it was a huge sale. Things were discounted crazy, like $3, $5. I mean, and sometimes you can get a doll for like $50 and not 125. So we were there. I was there with my girlfriends. And so Rick was with the kids that weekend. Well, when we got home, I got home on that Sunday. Jessica knew I had been shopping for her. So she was just like kind of closing her eyes, sitting in the living room, not watching what I was doing. So Josh and Rick helped me bring in all of the items. I mean, I bought a lot of stuff. And so it was fun. I mean, it was all on sale. So, I mean, I spent over $400. So that was a lot of stuff. So as I was then making piles, I had bought some things for my nieces and I bought some things for my Jessica. So I got to this little chicken in the basket. Do you want to pull it up on?
Yeah, you can try.
Otherwise, I have one physically
Can we
here.
share the screen or?
Are we able to share the screen?
I should be able to. And for those of you listening, let me see. Where is my share screen? There it
Well, I'll
is.
show it too.
There.
Okay. Well, this is the original one. Here, he's going to put it on. So I held up this little chicken in a basket and I said to Joshua, I bought this for your cousin Amanda, but it goes with Jessica's favorite doll, Josefina. Do you think Jessica would like this little chicken in a basket? Now, Josh said right away, she would love that. She would like that, Mom. So the chicken in the basket went in Jessica's pile. So now, an hour later, we got in the car, the minivan, to go to the mall. So, forgive me because there was so much that happened from Sunday when they died to now Thursday.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, the chicken in the basket. And I had to tell Kathy and I had to tell Rick all about this adorable, cute little, it's just, he's so fuzzy.
It is
And so
adorable. For
it's
those
adorable.
multiple
I think I paid $3 for it, right? And
awesome.
it saved us. So I told them the story and we're bawling, we're crying. And I'm like, oh my God, my kids are alive, right? They're not in the ground. So we
I think
got up.
that's something so important for people to know when you lose someone, they're not just gone or just in the ground and no
Right.
communication. So I think that's why this is so important for your story to be told.
So important. And I know people always think it's a sign of respect to RIP, rest in peace. I'm like, I don't think my kids are resting in peace. I think they have a lot to do on the other side.
Yep.
So, I just kind of giggle when I see that because I know that's a sign of respect. So,
Right. But they're all like a lot of fun. So
yeah, a lot of fun. Well, so we laughed, we cried. We were just enamored that our children were alive. I mean, that's huge. So we got up to leave, and then Kathy says, the kids have one more surprise for you in the car.
So we got out to the car and we jumped in there and we're just kind of sitting there looking around and, nothing's happening and we're waiting. And so we're a little disappointed. So we start up the car and there's a song that comes on the radio. And at the time the kids passed, their favorite movie was Tarzan from Disney. It was an animated movie. And there's a song from that movie that came on the radio. And the name of the song was Two Worlds, One Family. And so that was the message, another message that we got from them.
Yeah. So that day, right after that song, we were just blaring it in the car and we were off to Hardee's to finally eat, we were like, oh my God, we're starving, because you're just on shock mode and you just don't even want to do anything or taste food. So we went to Hardee's and had a big roast beef sandwich. And then as we were sitting there talking and, laughing about this huge miracle, incredible sign, we had decided we wanted to keep it to ourselves because we thought people are going to be, doubting Thomases, right? And we didn't want anybody to squash this beautiful gift. So we left and then we went to the funeral. And as we got there, it was pretty devastating. Two kids we had them put in one coffin, extra large man coffin. So they're together. But we saw how our family was just devastated, and again, 1999, these kids are dead, right? So we started sharing it with people and, it wasn't like it takes the pain away, but it made them smile. It made them smirk. It made them think, people were like, what is this, right? So we then got in the line to receive lots of love and we think over 400 or 500 people were there visiting us. And as we're, hugging people, I looked over and I could see my dad sharing our story, and people were kind of laughing, which is good. But yet I was like, they're sharing our story. It was so sad because here we were going to just keep it for ourselves. And then then the family we gave it to, and now they're sharing it. And then I was like, I looked at Rick and I actually hit you in the line. I was like, this story isn't just for us. This story is for the world. This sign is for the world. This is proof there's life after death, and we're going to write a book someday. Now, it took us 15 years to write that book, but
Right.
we did.
Yep.
So,
That's a pretty brave statement at that time. I mean, when you look back and say, this is what we're going to do, and to know that timing, I think, is everything. And I'm realizing there's so much with timing. And when your book came out, I feel was the exact time it needed to be there.
correct.
Right.
Most
Right.
definitely.
And I don't know if we obviously wouldn't have been ready to write it at that point either, but there's a lot of things that unfolded that needed to unfold for us, as well as for things that needed to unfold to be put in the book as well. So, because the book kind of talks about a lot of what took place over the first year after the accident. And we had some amazing adventures and signs, and we'll talk just a little bit more about a couple of them here. And so, after the funeral director was kind enough to offer us his place in Colorado. He said, I have a cabin out there. You guys can come out there, just stay as long as you want. Because for us, we needed the world to stop. The world had stopped for us, and we needed to kind of put things back together because there was police were involved, the media was involved, our families were involved. This was a big accident in that area, that city of Madison area. And we were the subject of media attention weekly. And so we were getting ready to leave and go ahead.
You want to talk about, okay. So, so like any female, you have your period, right? Okay. So you have your cycle. And after my cycle, it was right after the kids had passed. And I wanted to, I had to take my birth control pills, right? And in this whole process, my whole new thought was, there is no control in this world. What are we trying to control? I mean, spirit, God really has control. So I'm looking and I'm shaking these birth control pills at him. And I'm like, what are we doing trying to control this world? I think we should throw this away, And he's like, well, I think you should take them. We need to heal. And I was like, I am effing never healing from this, buddy, And he's like, well, just take them. Because we need some time. So I took them for about 4 days, 5 days maybe. And all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I said, I had a dream. And Rick's like, I had a dream too, which is odd. If he does dream, I'm sure he does, but he never remembers them. But this day he did. And so we both shared our dream, and it was need to get the chemical out of your body. It might not have been that many words, but chemical out of the body. And I was like, we both had that word chemical. Like, who talks like that, right? So we were like, whoa, we threw those birth control chemical pills in the garbage and went down the hill, went to Colorado. And by the end of August, went to Colorado, beginning of August. And by the end of August, I'm going down the mountain to get a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant. So, yep.
It's
That was pretty
surprising about timing and how things work. Just at
Right.
the time.
Right.
It's huge because I only have one ovary as well. So it's like, I don't know. Wow.
Right.
But the biggest thing is for you both to listen to it, because I think that's so helpful to people. You hear things and it's like, am I making it up? Should I be listening? For you both to trust that, it's a huge step, I think, on your journey.
Correct.
All of the messages you had been receiving.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that we both got the same message.
Yeah. I don't know if maybe that's why you remembered it, because they were like, if she just says it, he's going to be like, no, we need to heal from this, right? So it was interesting. And I think with our 23 years, we have listened to every single sign and every little cookie crumb that they give us. And sometimes it can be maddening because you don't know what it means right away, right? You have to just have the patience and be
That's a great point, that sometimes you're going to get messages and you don't have any idea, like, what is this for? What does it mean?
Right.
But if you just hold on to that nugget, eventually you'll see what it means.
Right.
Exactly. And I also think you have to trust your inner knowing as well. I think maybe my inner knowing was saying, okay, why are we controlling this world? But Plus, I love that we both got the same dream. So I'm glad you were, stubborn about that.
Sometimes stubbornness does pay off.
It does.
No, I use this line a lot when we're giving these talks or
Oh,
things,
here we
and I
go.
always tell people, I've learned to listen to spirit and my wife, and I stay out of trouble. So that's why I just said yes, and we're gonna do that.
That's a good motto.
Years. We've been together, what, 34, 35 years?
Yeah.
So whatever. Okay.
I love that.
Yep.
So where did you go from there?
Well, we started to try and go the normal route of, healing. Tried counselors, they weren't working. They were difficult to engage with because, one of them said, well, I can relate to your loss because I've had a divorce. Another one talked about we can help you get rid of the anger because you can scream into a pillow.
There was no pillow big enough to
Right.
scream into. I was pretty angry with God, So it just was like nothing was working. Plus, it was always like ripping a bandage off again because you'd go to see these therapists and they're like, tell me about it. Well, they knew about us, they knew we were on the news. So this was huge. So I'd be like, telling them my story, getting exhausted, because anytime you give your energy to something, you're exhausted. And then they'd be like, well, here, could you scream in this pillow? And I'm like, what? So then, and then we always walked away and I'd be like, I feel like crap. And we just paid them like $250, it never made me want to go back, they didn't help us. And I was like, this isn't working.
Right.
It's hurtful, actually. Yeah.
So eventually a friend of ours said, well, I've started doing some work with this shamanic energy or shamanic healing. And so I think you guys could benefit for it, and she gave us the information. There was a weekend seminar, out in Utah, and we thought, why not? Nothing else is working. So we went out there, and the gist of the weekend was to work on your own healing, and you're supposed to work with other people in the class as part of your healing process. And so I went up to the gentleman that was running it and I explained to him what had happened to us. And he said, well, when did this take place? And I said, July. And
This
right
was
now,
November.
this was in November. And he's like, well,
Very. Here we are. Heal us.
yeah. And he said, you're not going to work with people in the class. He said, I will work with Beth. And he said, Rick, you can work with my assistant. And so he asked to,
sorry, Rick is recovering from influenza, but he asked to do an illumination on me, a healing. And I'm like, go for it. Do whatever you want.
yeah,
Pillow's not working.
yeah.
Maybe this will work, right?
Yeah.
And so when it was done, he asked to talk to us after the weekend was done. And so we did, and we were talking with him, and he said, I want to let you know that, during the process of the illumination, the healing, your kids came to me. He said, but they didn't show up as little kids. They showed up as 7 and 8 foot tall, very powerful spirits, very old. And then he looked at me and he said, you were unconscious during the accident, weren't you, Rick? And we hadn't told him anything about what had happened. And I said, yes. And he said, well, the reason why you were unconscious is because you have been a shaman in many lifetimes before, and you knew that path beyond death. You were there to help the kids transition and move across. He said, and you need to become a shaman again. You need to learn this again and be a healer in this world. And so he also invited us down to Peru for the turn of the century. This was, 1999. It was going to be the year 2000. And for those that remember, Y2K was a big issue. Everybody was concerned about computers crashing and the world was going to come to an end. And we thought, well, what better place to be, than in a third world country where they don't really care about computers anyways that much. And so we went with him. And so one little thing that occurred, there were several things that occurred over there, but one that I like to bring up is, the Alberto was the gentleman's name that was leading the class. And he told Beth, he said, you have to learn to find beauty again.
And I'm like, you're crazy. There's nothing beautiful in this world, just devastation in my life, in my eyeballs, every
Right.
time you close your eyes, right?
totally
It's
understandable. I mean, that's
right.
something that's, when you suffer a loss, anytime you suffer a loss, it's that the world ends, you're devastated, and you had multiple levels of that loss going on.
Right.
So for people to understand that, to walk in your shoes, no, I don't know many people who have, and to come out and be doing what you're doing is very commendable and heartfelt. So I thank both of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so when we were down in Peru, one of the places we went to was a nature reserve, and it was out in the ocean. There was a series of islands that were set up as nation or as a nature reserve, and you couldn't go on the islands. So we were in boats in the ocean with a bright blue sky, and we're watching. There was sea lions and walruses and penguins and birds flying around, and the
And the
sun.
noises, I mean, as they're chirping and
Yep.
making noise, it was pretty cool.
And so all of a sudden Beth says, "Oh, this is so beautiful." And I looked at her and she's like,
I was like, dang it, he was right. Oh,
Doesn't that suck when someone's right on something?
no. And I'm like, check, my homework's done.
and so it was, even though we had such devastation, nature and life can show you those aspects of beauty, those small kernels, nuggets that you have to begin to latch onto and look for. And just appreciating that beauty of that scenery that was there and that beauty of life that was there helps you to continue to move on. And so we decided to continue with the classes with him, and well, let me back up one step. As we got through this process with being with him, and we were starting to think, or I was starting to think that, when you look back at all of the circumstances leading up to the accident and around the accident, I was beginning to think that this was meant to happen.
And I was thinking he was crazy.
Yeah. And so, as we start to look back on it, on the accident itself, we were leaving that Sunday or in the car, just getting ready to leave, and Beth had a spot on her shirt, and she's like, "Well,
I didn't even want to go, and I hear, that little talk in the head, your head, that you banter you have with yourself. And I was like, oh, Rick probably wants to get out of the house, do something a little different. And yes, he wants to build this fence for the kids. But yeah, and then I have a spot on my shirt from moving. I was like, oh, shoot, this is that shirt that I spilled something on. Maybe we should go home and change my shirt. And I'm like, no, it'll be fine. So as you're in one thought, I'm like, we should go home. Another thought, no, you'll be fine. No, I'm like, was that me or was that spirit like telling us to go, right?
And so, we decided to continue on. When we got to the intersection, the squad car that we had talked about earlier, that kind of caused everybody to pause and turn through the intersection, was responding to the domestic violence call from this drunk driver. So he was already on the route to the scene. And as he made the turn and moved away from the intersection, the drunk driver went past him at 80 miles an hour. So that officer was able to see the whole accident in his rearview mirror and was able to call in immediately to get, resources moving. The husband and wife doctor were in a car in the intersection and literally saw the whole accident and were able to be there immediately to help Beth and try and help Jessica. There was an off-duty police officer that happened to be walking by the intersection when the accident happened. He was able to jump in the car and immobilize me until they were able to figure out what was going on. He was holding my neck. Beth had asked for ambulances and
A
a
helicopter.
helicopter, and Flight for Life was already en route. They rerouted it to us. There was ambulances that they rerouted to us. Beth wasn't injured at all. And when we talked to the accident reconstructionist, he said, "You guys should not have survived." He said, "You should be dead based upon how that accident occurred."
And being hit at 80 miles an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we looked at all of these things, and all of these parts and pieces all had to fit together exactly. And we figured out that the reason why Beth had to be remain conscious is that she had, as the mother, she had to know and be able to see that anything and everything she asked for was made available for her at the accident site. There wasn't anything that she didn't need that didn't show up. There wasn't anything that she didn't ask for that didn't show up. And so she was able to see and understand over time that everything was done that could have been done. And so when you look at that and look at how all the pieces fit together, we just kind of came to the conclusion that this was meant to happen. You know, all of these circumstances fit.
Took me a while,
Yeah.
Which
because
is
I was like,
really understandable. That's
right.
Right.
Your brain is in shock. So, a lot of time I was still talking with God, like, okay, if I can ask and beg to go back in time, I can change this. It was odd. But yes, yeah, eventually I believed him too.
I don't think there's anything odd about that, about the what if, the what could have happened, what if something would have changed. I think a lot of people go through that
Right.
with the what ifs, and to look back and see all those signs and symbols later. I think for one thing, it takes a lot of courage and opening your heart to see things in a different perspective than you would have before. So it's
Right.
awesome in my mind.
Well, it also
Yes.
creates a big shift because we talk about this sometimes when we, help people that with grief and loss, and that if you truly believe, if you look at all of the circumstances leading up to it and you believe that this was meant to happen, then their whole life after that would never have taken place. So to grieve for the lost birthdays or the lost graduations or the lost weddings
Or the lost
or
grandchildren.
the lost
You're right.
grandchildren, I mean, you're grieving for something that was never going to be there anyways.
But that does take a while to
Yes.
get to that that finally accepting that,
Right.
and because it
I,
is very human of us to
I think that's a
experience loss.
great segue for one thing, is you're grieving that loss. And that's actually a question I was going to bring up, is how do you handle the holidays? Because we just got through with some pretty major holidays.
Mhm.
How do you handle that knowing that was never meant to be?
Well, that's that whole aspect when we talk about people, is that you first have to understand that they're not gone. You have to come to
Yeah.
that understanding and acceptance that they're not gone.
Two worlds, one family.
Yep, they're just in a different place. And you have to learn this language now. You have to learn to communicate with them. You have to be open to the way that they're communicating with you. And once you begin to understand that and accept that they're not gone, they're just in a different place, now that makes it easier to move forward to, well, if this was meant to happen, they're now doing their work from the other side as opposed to doing their work from here. And it begins to expand your time horizon, because if there's life after death, well, I don't have to accomplish everything right now in this lifetime. So I'm not going to lose everything. I don't have to have that fear of loss because I don't have it or I won't have it. And so all of that ties into this aspect of not grieving for things that would never have taken place. Lost holidays, graduations, weddings, grandkids, and all of that. And so then when you come back around to the holidays, you can still celebrate the holidays with them. They're just in a different place. And we do that all the time.
Right. And you also have to start new traditions,
Yep.
and you can incorporate your old traditions, but you have to start new ones. And
Right.
so, like, we put up Jessica and Joshua's ornaments. We always will incorporate their favorite foods. We talk about them. We have pictures all over at the house with them as well. So, the other thing is that I truly believe is and I had to get to this point, that everything happens for a reason, and that nobody dies unless it's meant to be. You have a day to be born, you have a day to die. So and that is my truth, that is what I truly, truly believe in. Once you start living that path, that everything happens in the right time, in the right order, you then can accept it a little bit easier. If you can trust your higher being, if you believe in Buddha, God, whoever you believe in, your higher being, has you and your life lesson in place here, it does help quite a bit as well to accept it.
Right.
But I love that you brought that up because there's so many of the readings I've done where they've shown all the things they've done, all the things that fell into place before they passed to show they were getting ready for the transition. And you didn't see it until when you look back, as I think both of you have done by looking back.
Right.
So I think that's something so key that people do choose when it's their time to go, and learning to have that new relationship like both of you have been doing with both of
Mhm.
them, I think is beautiful, and
Yeah.
for more people to step into that. And yes, it does take time.
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
does.
It does.
We also ended up having 3 more kids.
Yep.
So we had 2 boys and a girl, and so they're meant to be here as well.
Right. So that's how in some ways it's like if this didn't happen, would I have my Gabe, Ben, and Grace? I mean, they are clearly supposed to be here on this earth, and we don't know what yet. So it's gonna be fun to find out.
That's the other part, is what happens afterwards, all the different changes in your life that happen that draw in things that might have never been there had they have
Right.
stayed.
Right.
Correct.
And so this whole idea of, well, this happened for a reason and it was supposed to happen, means that our kids were supposed to be, Jess and Josh were supposed to be here for a little while to be able to put us in a position to be able to help others. And now they're working from the other side. And so as a result of that, we came to an understanding that the let me back up one step. We never felt a lot of anger or rage at the drunk driver.
Never.
And we never blamed him. We never put energy on that because we felt right from the beginning that, putting rage or anger or hate towards him would do nothing to honor our kids. And so we didn't even bother putting the energy towards it. It's like he did what he did. He ended up, going to jail. He went to jail for 13 and a half
He was supposed
years.
to serve 20, but he served 13 and a half. Yes.
And then he had 2 20-year parole sentences as well. And so because of our kids were classified as having been murdered, we're kept abreast of what happens with him.
It's almost like the witness protection program. We're given a letter if he's changed location, if his parole officers have changed or anything like that. So every once in a while through the years, we would get notification that he was, out of prison or went to Iowa. I would speak with some of the people in the DA office and they would say, I heard he became a minister, and he's in Iowa. But, that was pretty much it. But what happened December 3rd of this year of 2023 or 2022, excuse me, I received a letter and it was from the parole officers and it said that something with his parole was changing. And when I sped through the, kind of read it very quickly, I thought he was moving to Dane County because it said, call Dane County and find out some more information. And I'm like, he's moving back to Dane County. I don't read the fine print very well. So I'm like, this is interesting. He's moving back to Dane County. I thought he was a minister in Iowa. So this is the first time in 23 years I Googled the man and I was like, I found, David Ramish in Iowa as a minister, and it said for 5 years and 11 months and to present. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Now I better make sure this is him. Now he had tons of YouTube videos of church masses because he's a minister. And I think that probably maybe started with COVID. Maybe this was for their parishioners to be able to get a mass and everything like that. So I kind of watched it and I was like, yeah, that's David, And so then as I was watching it and kind of seeing him help people, the realization that, soul contract, spirit contract came to my mind. And then I was like, we knew each other with David in the afterlife, and he's part of the soul contract. I was like, boom, light bulb moment. And then it just was like, whoa, he chose to be the bad person to take Jess and Josh home, go to prison, and then become a minister to help people. And I was like, oh. I'm like, Rick, I'm like, boom, 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 light bulb moment.
That's a huge step to see, to look at it with such a different perspective, and to see the players. Sometimes I kind of look at it as players in a movie,
Right.
that kind of what role you're going to take, and to see that from that perspective is huge shift.
It was, yeah. And it was kind of just crazy to me. I mean, I never in 23 years thought about David playing this role, or so I, said to Rick, I think we should forgive him because we had always forgave him in our own hearts. We were never, like we said, we never hated him. We never called him, the a-hole or anything like that. We were very polite about it. We always called him Mr. Ramish. And I said, I think we should forgive him because think about how he can help more people. If that dense energy, because being shamans, we help alleviate that dense energy that has hurt people or is in their chakras. I'm like, if we help David get rid of that, think of the people he can help. So Rick's like, yeah, let's do this. So I did my due diligence, called the number on the letter, and so got the wrong person. He's going to email the right person who's going to now call me. Week later, nobody's called. So I call again. Now I get the right guy. And now that guy is telling me he's going to talk to David's parole officer and see that this is okay. Another week passes and I'm like, you know what? No. I am not, everybody's overworked. Everybody, too many cases. This is too big for us or for the world. This is too big for David. We need to do this. So we called him. We Googled him again and we got his phone number and he didn't pick up, but then, and there was a phone, it said, if you want to talk to Pastor David, here's his number. No, I didn't have it. I'm literally at my desk. There's no pen and paper. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got nothing. So he goes, let's just call again. And he picked up the second time because he saw that it was Beth Olsen on his caller ID.
Wow, that had to be a surprise for him.
Yeah. He goes, he was in shock. He literally had to pick up the second time. So maybe the first time he had to take a breath. But
yeah, we said, David, this is Rick and Beth Olsen. And he's like, well, it can't be, and it can't be. I can't believe you're calling. And, he was at a loss for words. You could tell he was starting to cry. We told him that we would like to meet with him. We said, we both have been on a journey and I think it's time that we meet and just talk for a little bit. We weren't going to tell him at that point that we wanted to, come and forgive him, but we just wanted to try and make arrangements to meet. And so we exchanged phone numbers and
yeah, I always thought it was weird that I have him in my contacts. Never thought I would, but didn't think that would happen.
Big shift.
Yeah, quite a big shift there. So we started texting each other and we gave him the date of December 29th. I knew in my heart I wanted to do this in 2022. I don't know why. I just wanted to. And also I'm like a dog with a bone when I want to do something. I'm like, let's get this done. So
I can't imagine that at all.
So he said he had to make sure it was okay with the parole officers because during the sentencing, he was ordered not to speak about us or use our names or contact us. So he wanted to make sure it was okay. So he got back to us and said, yep, 12:30. And we decided to go to Iowa to his church where he would feel the most comfortable. So now, and then he also mentioned to us, he goes, I'm only about 2 hours from Madison.
Right.
So he still thought we lived in the Madison area, not that we moved. And so it was really 3.5 hours. So that December 29th, we get in the car and I'm like, ugh, we got to drive 3.5 hours. So I was ugh. But Rick's like, no, we really should go there. And I'm like, I know. So it was a lovely Thursday afternoon. We drove there, got to his office and went in, and it was David and his wife. He was remarried they've been married 8 years, and the parole officer. And David was behind his desk, his wife to the right, and then the parole officer, and just kind of like at the desk, myself and Rick right next to me. And Rick just starts with, it's been 23 years. I thought we'd get together and talk. And so the tension in the room was very high and just thick. And, I could see the wife. She was like, don't you hurt him? Don't you hurt him? Because he's been on his own journey, right? I mean, he's an alcoholic. Yeah, and so now he's helping people. I'm sure she was really protective. So I just was like, blah, 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 blah. I, I can't even remember what I said. But I was like, I wanted them to know that we were okay and that we had 3 more children. And, I again, and Rick, I think, was like, whoa, she's.
Somebody uncorked the bottle there.
It was kind of comical, but what do you can't plan for this stuff. There's no shots came pouring out. So Rick says, I look at him and he's like, well, David, do you want to add anything? Okay.
And he said a number of things, but one of the things that was really insightful for us is that he was telling us when he was in prison, he felt really helpless because
he really said it was hell.
Yeah.
Which I thought, yeah, it's supposed to be.
He knew that he had caused devastation and destruction by, the death of our 2 kids. He knew that he had destroyed his own family, but he had no idea what happened to the 2 of us. And because he couldn't reach out to contact us or to, look for us, he had no idea. He was so afraid that he had destroyed us as well. And he said that's the biggest thing that was weighing on him the whole time, is because he was afraid that he had also destroyed another family and us. And he said that, when he gives his service on Sundays, he said there's always this moment of time where you people are allowed to pray for whoever. And he said, I always pray the same prayer. He said, I pray for Jessica and Joshua. He said, I pray for my 2 daughters. And he said, I also pray for the 2 of you because I had no idea what had happened to you.
And he kept wiping tears away.
Yep.
I mean, it just, the tension, just the what we were there for to
Right.
forgive him was just the energy, the dense energies was just kind of like coming off of him in the room. The wife stopped having that stern look and
Right.
scared look in her eyes.
And we had heard the same thing. We heard from the parole officer that was there, the one in Iowa, and the one that Beth talked to on the phone, that there was no reason for us to get this letter. Nobody can figure out how this letter was sent to us because there was no reason for it. He
There was
wasn't
no
moving.
change.
There's no change.
Yeah.
But that letter triggered us to do this again. So it's, as we've talked earlier, it's another sign from our kids that they just continue to help orchestrate things from the other side. And so the parole officer said, I've been doing this for 19 years. And he said, I've never had a request like this.
Because we asked him, Rick
Yeah.
was like, I don't mean to be rude, but why are you here?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be a very good question. I was wondering the same thing.
Right. Well, he said that with, a crime of this magnitude, he's never had the victims want to meet the perpetrator. And he said he wanted to be here because of that. He
For
said
David.
and he also wanted to be here for David. He wanted to make sure that, things wouldn't get out of hand.
And he wouldn't spiral out of control or,
Right.
with drinking again. And yeah.
And he said it
It's
was
totally
just, he said it was beautiful what we were, what was taking place and the gift we were giving David. And he was very thankful.
Yeah. I mean, he was wiping tears away too. Yeah, exactly. So,
That's something that's so very, when people think about this and are even listening to this, they're like, to take from where you were, to move to where you are now, and to actually meet him and do another whole level of healing. And when you talk about Jessica and Joshua, and I'm full disclosure, when Beth and Rick were at one of the retreats, myself and a group of other people brought through Jessica and Joshua, and they were beautiful, beautiful souls that were so full of love and so full of compassion and understanding for everyone. It makes me choke up because to understand what they had to do in order to make the rest of your whole life to go how it went, to know that they were there for a short amount of time and to make that impact with you, and then to continue to make that impact with not only you, but all of the people that were the, let's say, the players in what was going on, is such a huge monumental achievement, I think, of how it's affected so many lives and the trajectory it's put both of you on, including David. What a trajectory at just those two, and I'm call them souls beings because they are beautiful. You know, we look at ourselves as, you know, your Joshua and Jessica, but sometimes I see them a little bit differently as
Right.
some other souls, so much with so much more to offer.
Right.
So it's been a pleasure for me to be part of this journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being part of it too. Yeah.
And
So
so,
how did it go after the first initial meeting then? And when you were in that meeting with David?
so we were getting ready to leave. You know, it was a time we were in there for over an hour. And David said, well, he said, I want to show you my Bibles. He said, when I was in prison, he said, I wore out not only one, but two Bibles.
He goes, I never thought I'd even wear out one, let alone two Bibles in prison.
And
So he says, he shows it to us, this stack of Bibles. And this is the picture of what we saw. And I was like, why is there a chicken in the basket on those Bibles? I'm like, what? And the wife goes, oh my gosh, we love to thrift. We like to go to antique stores. And I found this cute little chicken in this basket. And I bought it as a joke for David years ago, put it on the Bibles. And David also said, those are two Bibles. And the top one is my AA book. So it's two Bibles and an AA book. And he said, or she said, David, you don't have to keep it there. It really was a joke. And he said, no, I kind of like the chicken in the basket up there. Or he didn't even call it that. He said, I liked it up there. And that's our term, chicken in the basket. So I said, okay, oh my gosh, I have to take pictures of this. And I said, we have another story to tell you. So so we proceeded to tell him, but the profound thing about this is, and now Rick's going to bring this up, this is my collection of chickens in a basket. I've collected them for 20 years. And
It's so cool.
it's so cool because my first one it was actually even on here. It was concrete. It was for the garden. And I bought it. And I had it on the counter with shopping with my girlfriend, and she said, "Oh, very cool chicken in the basket." I'm like, oh, "Whoa! I didn't even see it was a chicken in the basket. It was just calling to me to buy it." And I was like, "Oh, there's other chicken in a basket I can get." So for 20 years, I have been collecting them. So as you see behind us, this is now our artwork in our living room. So cool. It means so much that and Rick loves to share this, is that the chicken in the basket story saved us 23 years ago. You know, we were able to know that they were alive. And then we think it's very profound that his Bibles and his AA book, which kept him alive, helped him survive. There's a chicken in the basket on it.
You can't make
this up. You can't make it up.
no.
You can't make it up.
We had to share with them our chicken in the basket story with Kathy. We're all crying again.
Yep.
It was really crazy. We hugged. I never thought I would hug David. Seriously. So 23 years later, we got this huge sign. We forgave him. He's got forgiveness. He can hopefully help more people. And we got in the car and my mouth was down, like to the floor. And I was like, wow, because nobody was going to know about this, that we forgave him. It wasn't anything we were going to share. It was just for him, truly for him. But then the kids give us this. And it's like, again, this is for the world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I loved about it was on the way home, we were calling people left and right and telling them our signs about this chicken in the basket. And it brought me back to when the kids died and I was on the way to the hospital with Jessica. She was in the ambulance and I was calling so many people to tell them my kids died. Now here 23 years later, we get this sign
Mhm.
that from Jess and Josh again and it's like I don't know, everything is just coming full circle.
And so to me, I just marvel at it because when you think about how much of this was orchestrated ahead of time,
Mhm.
you know, the chicken in the basket within a week of
Yeah.
the accident, and you know, David becoming a minister, and the Bibles, and the chicken in the basket in the picture here, and you know, how long did all of that have to come into place? How many different things
Yeah.
had to all line up for this to occur? And so it just reinforces this whole idea that this was meant to happen, and there is life after death, there is help from the other side,
Mhm.
and it's the power of what, you know, they can help with. And it just reinforces for us that, you know, this is why we're here to help people, you
Right.
know, in whatever format we can, whether it's, you know, talking with people, you know, doing stuff like this, showing the pictures, telling our story, the book, you know, the shamanic, the
The
energy healing,
healings.
any of that stuff. It's just we're supposed to be here to help others, and we are fortunate enough to understand that that's our role, our purpose in this life, and we're trying to do the best that we
Yeah.
can with that to help honor our kids and what they've been able to do.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny because as I mentioned, I had tapped into Jessica and Joshua before. And before this interview, in between the interim when we had set it up and when we started to do it, all I could hear was them laughing because I was going to watch another interview you had done about this story. And they said, nope, 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 you got to wait. And I'm like, okay. So I hadn't listened to any of the other interviews. And they
Oh,
said,
good.
it's going to be a good one for you. It's really good. It's really funny. So
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's
it
good.
was just kind of funny. It's like they're like, we got a good one for you. Like
Mhm.
you'll like it. So we've been working a long time on this. So it's kind of cool to see the rest of the story now because it was like, they're like holding a secret back from me. So I was
Right.
like, yeah, your secret.
Yeah, and with Rick being sick, then you had to wait a couple more weeks too. So you were good.
I thought it was hilarious. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay. But they also kept telling me this is something for the world. It needs to be out there. And the first time you even contacted me, Beth, I knew it's like they were like, this is for the world. And when you kept saying this is for the world, it's like, yep, that's what they keep telling me. So it's so cool to see what they can do, what they're capable of doing from the other side. That I mean, honestly, the chicken in the basket for both of you to have
Mhm.
that's something coming from somewhere else, guidance, nudges, that support always there. I think it's amazing.
And we love that. It's so odd that it's a chicken in the basket. I
Right.
mean, it could
It's
have been his baseball, like a signed baseball from his favorite team, right? I mean,
Yeah, you think a kid thing, you wouldn't think a chicken in a basket would be something for a kid, so it's way out of the norm. But
right.
then I feel like a lot of that is specifically way out of the norm, so people actually notice because otherwise it's so easy to dismiss those
Right.
small signs people see.
right.
Right.
Yeah, the doubting Thomases. Yep,
Yeah,
could poo-poo it, but not this one.
we would have never seen this chicken in the basket
Yep.
on his Bibles the way it was positioned in his office unless he would have made a point of showing us his Bibles. So we
Mhm.
would have never seen it otherwise. So it was like, it was, again, that was supposed to happen. He was
Mhm.
supposed to talk to his Bibles to us,
Yep.
about his Bibles to us,
Yeah, it was in the upper corner
right?
of his shelf, and he could see it from his desk every day. But the upper corner, top shelf, was there as a reminder,
Hmm.
right? And so yeah, as we were leaving, and of course, just embracing and giving hugs
Right.
again, very odd, but that's when he wanted to share something with us that was very important to him. So yeah, it's just still blows my mind when I think about it, because I mean, even for me to collect those chickens for 20 years, I mean, they're kind of ugly. Let's be honest. And they are in my house all over.
It's not like
Mhm.
flowers or something,
And Rick never said, "What are you doing?" And
Nope.
it was just like, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I have like 6 of these. I collect those too. They're in boxes, but I want to give them to my kids when they leave the house so that they have the true chicken in the basket.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So I want to ask a little question. How do your children, your kids now, how do they handle all of this? And like, are they looking like, mom and dad are a little nuts? Are they more open with everything? Are you very open with what you talk about there? So how does that work with the second step of your journey with the family you have physically here?
Well, they respect us and respect this path so much. I mean, we have healings in our homes all the time, probably at least 3 a week. People are coming into our home, but it's also because we've always been open with them.
Mhm.
We talk about spirit, we talk about life after death. Because when Jess and Josh passed, I didn't even know what I believed. I was raised Catholic, and we're taught eternal life. Well, what does that mean? Okay, nobody ever tells you exactly what that means. I believe it means we're all energy, we're all spirit.
Mhm.
So we've always have been so open and honest with the kids. Now Ben kind of gets a little nervous sometimes when we talk about it. Like sometimes we'll have ghosts in the basement, they haven't crossed over yet, and so he gets a little nervous, but
That's understandable. It's a little out of the norm.
we have ghosts in our house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about with like shamanism, how did that help you? Because that I think was a big integral part of both of your healing, moving to where you're at now. How did that help? And you had talked about, they said like, hey, Rick, you should be doing this. And you had just lost your children. And how did that really like settle with you? Were you like, oh yeah, I feel that? Or were you like, he's completely nuts? Did you kind of start like embracing it? How did that work for you? And at what point were you using it just for yourself and your own healing between you and Beth, and taking it out there to the world and you've been doing it more publicly?
Well, we realized after that weekend in November and the trip to Peru that this avenue, these people were speaking spirituality. They were speaking a language we wanted to understand. And frankly, it was the first thing that we had come across that was really helping us, not only to understand, but to begin to accept and feel better about the process.
Right.
And so when he asked us to continue with the taking classes with him, we agreed, and we got another really big sign. One of the classes, the next class that we went to was in February, and it was in California, and it was on a sacred Indian ground. There was a retreat center that was there. And so we were there and we were working later in the evening. Beth and I and a couple of other people and the instructor and the assistant instructor were working there. And we were practicing.
We were practicing and sensing energies on this gentleman who's just laying on the ground. And so we were just, of course, I'm feeling nothing. Rick's, sitting right next to me, kneeling right next to me. And on the wall that I'm facing, there's a window, and all of a sudden I see a bolt of white lightning just go right through the window, but outside. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a thunderstorm. We're from Wisconsin. It always rains here. We always have thunderstorms. But then I was like, wait a minute, we're in California. They have a drought. They don't have rain. So then that bolt of lightning came into the building. And one by one, it was fluorescent track lighting,
Incandescent track lighting.
and they were gold. And one light starts flickering. They weren't on, but all of a sudden one starts flickering. Or maybe they were on and
They were on.
they were on, but just one starts flickering. And then all of a sudden I see Rick go, and he puts his hand on his lap. And he closes his eyes, and I'm just looking at him going, I clearly have no idea what's going on. Maybe I hear in my head, don't worry, we got him. And the, the assistant that is sitting across from us, she's like, Alberto, get over here, get over here. And I'm just like, I was like clueless. I don't know, maybe I was really tired. I mean, I was pregnant. So. And I'm looking at another track lighting is now starting to flash. And so Alberto comes over by Rick, and Alberto's like, "Are you okay, Rick?" And he's not saying anything, but he's sweating and he's just like breathing, and eyes are closed. And then Alberto says, "Rick, you need to stand up. The spirit of lightning is inside you. He wanted you, and if you don't stand up, that energy will just stay in your joints and you will become paralyzed, basically. You won't be able to move. So you have to get up." So it took you about 5 minutes to be able to stand up. And Rick is a 4th degree in Taekwondo. So Alberto said, just start doing your basic forms. So then Rick started doing his forms.
Yeah, and for me, I just felt this rush of energy come in, and then the next thing I know, Alberto's telling me, you got to get up and move. And so as I was doing my basic forms, I could just feel these waves of energy coming off of me. And, I was moving around, and eventually Alberto said, well, just go outside and ground this energy.
Well, in the
best you
meantime,
can."
the lights are like,
Yeah.
it was strobe lighting. It was crazy. And again, we had flip phones in this was not the 2000.
2000.
So there was no iPhone, and nobody was like, it was a disco. It was crazy. It was
Disco ball in there.
it was a beautiful scene. So we knew we didn't make it up. I mean, yeah. So then you went.
Yeah, so I went outside and grounded it, and eventually I came back in, grounded it the best I could, and Alberto said, "You know what happened?" I said, "No, I have no idea." He said, "Well, you guys just go to bed. We'll talk about it in the morning." And so,
Don't worry
Just
about
go
it.
to bed.
Don't worry about it.
well, and so when we met with him the next morning, he began saying to us, you were hit the spirit of lightning. It's there's 3 traditional callings to become a shaman in the shamanic cosmology that we work in, and one of them is to be struck by lightning. And he said, when I have journeyed, Alberto was saying, when I've journeyed with shamans in the Andes, he said, when one of them gets struck with lightning, when somebody gets struck with lightning, the shamans that are with them immediately take that person on as an apprentice, because they know that's a sign from spirit that you're supposed to be a shaman. And one of the other signs was to, go through a radical life shift, or, a traumatic experience, which we had. And so we joke about it that I've had 2 out of the 3 signs, and I'm not waiting for the 3rd. So,
So what
this,
is the third? May I ask?
the 3rd is to heal yourself from an illness that you can't.
Life-threatening illness.
Oh yeah, you don't want to do that one.
No.
Two is good.
Yeah,
Two's good.
two's good. I'm a little dense. It took me twice to understand. So,
Get the message. No more needed.
yeah. And so, I mean, that was a pretty clear sign that, hey, you're supposed to be a shaman. And so we continued with the classes. And as we went through the classes, it really helped us, by clearing out that dense energy that affected us from the loss and the traumas and everything else. It really helped us to get to a better place. And that's what we use now when we work with other people, is we use these shamanic healing techniques to help them in any type of trauma that
Right.
they have gone through. Because you're working at that energetic level from a shamanic standpoint, you're able to effect change and to create change and shifts with people that sometimes take years of conventional, therapy or counseling, and there's a place for that. But the shifts that can take place can be dramatic from a shamanic standpoint. And for us, that's another reason.
Right.
We see what takes place with these people. We see the impact it has. And we know that we're supposed to do that.
Right. There's times I'm sorry, there's times when people come here for healing, I wish I could do a before and after photo, because the amount of shift. And I mean, sometimes they're coming and they're crying. They're like, I don't know why I'm even crying, or whatever. But they go up to Rick's office, which is above the garage, and they're crying, they're upset, they're just again, not great energy. They come down and they're smiling and they're laughing. And I wish I could do a before and after, but nobody really wants that. So
Nobody wants to see the before on themselves.
Oh,
I get to see it in my mind, and I'm like, whoa, very different.
yeah.
And that's something for you. So a lot of people, we have listeners all around the country and around the world. Do you do your sessions also online where people can do online sessions with you, or is it strictly in person?
No, we do both. We do, in person and remote. In fact, I would say over half of the healing sessions I do are remote, and I've literally done them all over the world. So energy is not limited by time or distance, so it can take place.
And that's something I think is so cool. And I personally have experienced some of your classes online, so I can attest that. I just wanted people to know that a lot of your sessions are available online for people to get from anywhere. And that's something for me to let people know there are ways to move through this. And you had mentioned, the conventional methods and the energetic methods, and there's a time and a place for both. And if you're feeling up to it, to even try both and see what works for you. And I really feel it's a resonant, like you had said, people come there and I don't even know why I'm here. And
Right.
it's that following and trusting yourself to what will work for you, what will help you in the moment, and going with that path as long as it serves you. And I think that's something so key for people to listen to themselves, to know what is going to help themselves. They're there for a reason. They're hearing you for a reason. And
Mhm.
and the people that are listening are hearing this for a reason.
Right.
And know that's all part of that. Let's see that play that's going on.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes when we ask people, well, how did you find out about us? Just the synchronicities that led them to get a hold of us. So you know, they're directed to us, and we accept that.
So if anybody out there has a chicken in the basket in their room, they might be wanting to call these.
Huge sign, people.
Yeah.
Good sign, good sign. Well, I've got to say, I just wanted to thank both of you for being here. And is there something else you would like to talk about before we close shortly?
Just the best way for people to, find out more about us is, as you mentioned earlier, go to the website. It's weneverleftyou.com. It's the same title as the book, We Never Left You, which that title of the book was given to us by Josh through a medium. So he picked it out. We have information about what we do, about classes. It's all on there, and how to contact us, and if they have questions. So we would encourage you to reach out, because you never know where this is going to lead. Some of these people that we've done classes with now are having an impact on others and doing healing for others. And so
Right.
that's what we need is we
This
need
world needs it.
you need
Mhm.
more light workers, more energy workers out there to help the world where it's at right now. With the sign from the chicken in the basket here, that's the kind of stuff that we need to get out there.
And if you would need us to speak somewhere, let us know. We can do Zoom calls and
Hmm.
pretty much do the same type of talk, because it does inspire people
Yeah.
to know that their loved ones are still with them. I think it's our story, but you still feel the love
Hmm.
that Jess and Josh are giving us. It is transcending to everybody else as well.
And I think that's something so key for people to realize. And I feel this story is going to continue with more twists and turns from Jessica and Joshua. They're not done yet. It's like the tip of the
Yay!
iceberg.
I keep asking him what's the next step. So I'll call Angel and I'll ask you. What are they telling you?
They just keep laughing. They're like, wait for the next one. Like, oh yeah. So be ready to be
That's
surprised.
fun.
Have a laugh.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, those in the spirit world, a lot of them, they have such great energy and they love to laugh and make us laugh and make us lighten up, because that lighter energy is so needed in the world going forward. And I'm so happy that both of you are playing a part in it, and so are they happy. it just feels like such pride to have both of you as their parents and to see how you are embracing your journey with them is something so key for so many people. And for all of those out there, when you've lost loved ones, embrace that next step of your journey because it can be fun, enlightening, and full of surprises. And also for those of you out there, make sure to check on Beth and Rick. Check out their website. They have so much great information. And if you have someone who's lost someone, you know, we're coming up to Valentine's Day when this comes out, getting close to there. If you have someone that's missing someone, you know, go on Amazon, get their book, We Never Left You, and give it to a friend, gift it to a friend that needs that message right now to spread that energy of love. And I just want to say thank you to both of you for being here. And I want to remind people, I'm just going to go through a quick rundown of some of your classes I saw you have coming up. There is the basic energy class, personal transformation, divination, death and shamanism, journey to the upper world, journey for your power animal, and the shamanic group healings, and so much more. So keep watching their website, sign up on their email list. You get up to date what's going on, where they're going to be, what they have going on. And a lot of these classes are ones you can just join and have the experience. I highly encourage you to try that. And again, it's weneverleftyou.com. And also to let people know the episode after this one, I am going to be having on Barnaby Jones. That's going to be on Tuesday, February 21st at 7 p.m. Central Time. And he is with Cryptoids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. And we are going to explore the understanding of what cryptids, anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, what they go into, what they check out to. And we're going to dive into cryptozoology, which I had no clue what it was until I got to interview Barnaby, and it's so interesting. So we're going to dive into cryptozoology and how it helps with what he looks for, which is the Bigfoot, sloths, frogman investigations. And he's been on with Discovery channels with all kinds of different things. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So you're going to hear more information from him firsthand. And you can check out more about him at wisconsincaps.com. And I just want to thank all of you for listening. And this has been such a pleasure for me. And I thank both of you for being here. And I look forward to all of you joining us on the next episode of Edge Talk Radio. Thank you.